I ignored the gold digger warnings. And paid for it 10 years later. I never thought I would be the kind of man who ends up telling his life story to strangers on the internet, but here I am. Not because I want sympathy. Not because I want revenge. I'm doing this because I need to finally say the truth out loud. Even if no one I know ever hears it. I am 35 years old now. Divorced. A weekend father. And still trying to understand how 10 years of my life slipped away while I was convinced I was building a future. I met my ex-wife, Annabelle, when we were both in college. I was 22, broke, anxious, and constantly afraid of failing at life. I came from a lower middle-class family. No connections. No safety net. Just pressure to succeed and a mountain of student loan debt waiting for me. Annabelle felt like comfort. She listened to me when my anxiety took over. She reassured me when I talked about imposter syndrome and how I felt like everyone around me was smarter, richer, and more confident. She had her own struggles too, and I thought that made us equal. I believed we were growing together. But even back then, my family had doubts. My parents said she was polite and sweet. But something about her didn't feel genuine. My sister was more direct. She said Annabelle loved comfort more than effort. I defended her every single time. I told them they were overthinking it. Then Annabelle dropped out of college. She told me she didn't see the point of finishing her degree. Her plan was to be a stay-at-home mom one day, so she didn't need one. At the time, it didn't bother me. I wasn't rich. I wasn't even sure I ever would be. I believed love wasn't about money. I believed in partnership. A year later, everything changed. I landed my dream job. 6 figures right out of school. A company car. Paid travel. Bonuses. They even offered to pay for my master's degree. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. Annabelle cried when I told her. She hugged me like I had saved us both. I used part of my signing bonus to buy her an engagement ring. That's when things started to shift. She wanted a big wedding. Not just nice, but extravagant. She wanted the biggest house we could qualify for. Expensive furniture. Decorations that looked good in pictures. Vacations that felt more like status symbols than actual rest. Whenever I hesitated, she would say, "We can afford it now." Whenever I worried about saving, she would say, "You work so hard. Don't you want to enjoy life?" My family warned me again. They said the money hadn't changed her, it had revealed her. I ignored them. The wedding drained most of my bonus. The house drained the rest. I told myself this was normal. This was what success looked like. Then we had kids, 2 of them. They are 8 and 4 now. That's when the spending got worse. Private school. Designer clothes they would outgrow in months. Birthday parties that looked like celebrity events. Multiple vacations every year. I worked longer hours to keep up. I told myself this was what being a good husband and father meant. For years, Annabelle never complained. Not about my hours. Not about my travel. Not about being home with the kids. In fact, I once told her I felt guilty that she carried so much while I worked. She smiled and told me she was happy. Then I got laid off. It wasn't a surprise. My industry had been shrinking for years. I stayed as long as I could, but eventually the company went under. When I told Annabelle, she panicked. Not about me. About the lifestyle. I reassured her. We had savings. I found a new job within a month. The problem was the pay. It was significantly less. We could survive. But we couldn't pretend anymore. I told her we had to make changes. No more private school. No more luxury trips. No more reckless spending. But something in her changed. 2 months later, she sat across from me at our kitchen table and said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." Just like that. She said we had grown apart. She said I worked too much. She said she needed space to find herself. She took the kids and went to her mother's. I knew then that my marriage was over. A few weeks later, she asked for a divorce. She swore it had nothing to do with money. She said she married too young and needed to see what else was out there. She put the blame entirely on me. I believed her. Or at least I wanted to. 2 weeks after filing, she was with someone new. 3 months later, she moved in with him. Before our divorce was even final, they were engaged. He's a surgeon. 6 figures. Big house. Comfortable life. That's when everything finally made sense. The divorce took half of everything. The house. The savings. Even part of my retirement. I signed the papers in silence, feeling completely numb. The worst part wasn't the money. It was my kids. I see them on weekends now. Every time I drop them off, my chest tightens. They ask why I don't live with them anymore. Why mommy has a new house. Why there's a new man around. I lie. I tell them grown-ups sometimes don't work out. I tell them none of this is their fault. I tell them I love them more than anything. And that part is true. What I don't tell them is how angry I am. Angry at Annabelle. Angry at myself. Angry that I ignored every warning sign because I thought love meant loyalty at any cost. I went from loving her to despising her. Not because she left, but because I realized I was never loved for who I was, only for what I provided. My family never said, "We told you so." They didn't need to. Life already did. 3 years later, I'm still rebuilding. I live smaller now. I trust less. But I see clearer. If I could say one thing to the man I used to be, it would be this. Love should make your life lighter, not drain you until there's nothing left. After Annabelle moved in with her new fiancé, everything changed. Suddenly, the life I had spent a decade building felt fragile, like it had been constructed on sand. The kids started talking about things I could no longer provide. Bigger rooms, private lessons, trips to theme parks I could only dream of. At first, I tried to smile through it. I told myself appearances didn't matter. I reminded myself I was still giving them love, time, attention. But reality hit me hard. Every weekend became a reminder of what I had lost, not just the house, or the savings, or the material things, but the stability I had assumed would last forever. I replayed memories in my head. Moments I had thought were intimate and meaningful suddenly seemed transactional. The dinners, the shopping trips, the vacations, it all had a price I hadn't understood at the time. And that price wasn't money. It was trust, devotion, and honesty. I realized I had been blind. I had ignored all the little signals, the subtle pressure for upgrades, the way she had always smiled when I spent money but never when I invested my time in us. I had dismissed my family's warnings because I wanted to believe in the person she appeared to be, not the person she truly was. I also started noticing her absence. She was no longer a partner, she was a visitor in my life, bringing the children back to me for weekends but nothing more. I was a single parent in spirit, even if the law said otherwise. I had to learn to manage everything, homework, doctor visits, birthday parties, school events, while holding back the pain and resentment I carried inside. Financially, it was a shock. Half the savings gone. Half of what I had worked for taken. The house, the furniture, the investments we had built together, now split. Every transaction reminded me of how vulnerable I had been. I couldn't afford the luxuries anymore, but I could afford to survive. And survival became my mantra. I started to rebuild my life slowly. I downsized my apartment. I stopped buying unnecessary things. I restructured my finances. Every dollar had meaning. Every decision mattered. I learned the value of caution, of preparation, of protecting myself emotionally and financially. Emotionally, the work was harder. Some nights I cried alone, missing the children and mourning the illusion of the life I thought I had. Some nights I was angry at her, at myself, at the world. But gradually, the anger softened into clarity. I understood that she had made her choices and I had to make mine. The most difficult part was the internal reckoning. Realizing that someone I had loved deeply had never truly loved me for who I was. Realizing that devotion can sometimes be conditional, and that sometimes, love is a word used to justify convenience. Despite it all, I refused to let the situation define me. I made a promise to myself that I would show my children what real love and responsibility looked like. Not in grand gestures, but in consistency, presence, and honesty. I became the parent I had hoped to be in marriage, but alone. And with a clearer understanding of what that really meant. Slowly, I started to see the lessons in the pain. I understood that resilience is built through hardship. That protecting yourself is not selfish. That wisdom sometimes comes at the cost of your heart. But that knowledge is worth the price. And even though my life was smaller, quieter, and far from the one I had imagined, it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt that reality was enough. The first few months after she left were the hardest. Every morning, I woke up to an empty apartment. The silence deafening. The little things hit the hardest, the coffee mug she always left on the counter. The kids' toys scattered in the wrong places. The smell of the house that once felt like home now felt foreign. I tried to stay busy. Work became my refuge, but even then, the reminders were everywhere. I couldn't escape the memory of the life I thought I had. I started therapy, not because I wanted sympathy, but because I needed to understand how I had let this happen. I needed to learn how to process the betrayal without letting it consume me. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I moved into a smaller apartment. I sold the house we had shared, letting go of all the reminders. I cut unnecessary expenses. I focused on my career, not for status, but for stability. Every dollar I saved became a small victory. I also focused on my children. Weekends became sacred. I cooked, helped with homework, read bedtime stories, and just listened. They noticed I was different. Quieter, more focused, and maybe a little sad. But they also noticed I was fully present. I realized that being there for them mattered more than any lavish vacation or designer toy ever could. I reconnected with my family. My parents and sister never once said, "I told you so," but they were there. Quietly supporting me, letting me learn the lessons without humiliation. Their patience and care became a reminder that love and loyalty don't always come with a price tag. The anger I had felt toward Annabelle gradually transformed. It didn't disappear, but it became a tool for clarity. I began to see the patterns I had ignored, the spending habits, the emotional manipulation, the way love had been conditional. I learned to recognize red flags, not to blame myself, but to protect myself in the future. I learned that resilience is built in the quiet moments. It's in showing up for your children when you feel broken. It's in paying your bills on time when you have half the resources. It's in keeping your word, even when life feels unfair. And slowly, life started to feel like it was mine again. I was no longer running from the past. I was living with the lessons it had taught me. 3 years after the divorce, I can finally see the full picture. Annabelle is thriving in her new life. She has the house, the stability, and the luxury she desired. And I accept that. I don't wish her harm, even though for a long time, I did. I don't need revenge. I need peace. I have rebuilt my life. Not the life I imagined, but a life that is honest and sustainable. I have smaller comforts, yes, but I have clarity, independence, and respect for myself. Most importantly, I have my children. I am present. I am consistent. I am teaching them not about the life you can buy, but about the life you can build with love, patience, and integrity. I want them to know that they are never defined by what someone else takes from them, but by what they choose to give to themselves and the world. I still think about Annabelle sometimes. I think about what could have been if I had seen the signs sooner. But those thoughts are no longer poisonous. They are lessons. Lessons about trust, love, and human nature. A gold digger doesn't always reveal themselves in the beginning. Sometimes, they wait. Sometimes, they build a life with you, smiling while you work tirelessly, while you invest your love, time, and money. And sometimes, they leave the moment your resources are no longer what they desire. I didn't lose because I loved. I lost because I gave blindly, without protection or discernment. That lesson cost me dearly, but it also taught me how to survive and thrive again. 3 years later, I am stronger. I am wiser. I am cautious but not cynical. I still believe in love, but I now know that love must be mutual, not conditional. My final lesson, and the one I hope anyone listening remembers, is this. Love should lift you up, not drain you. Trust should be earned, not assumed. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who sees your heart as their bank account. I still love my children more than anything. I still carry the pain of losing 10 years to someone who wasn't truly mine. But I also carry clarity, dignity, and a renewed purpose. Life goes on. And for the first time in a decade, I feel like it's finally mine.